if you were selling calves, when would you suggest they be taken to the sale barn? And so that just tees us up perfectly for Dr. Scott Brown, who's going to talk about the cattle market outlook for us.
So I think there's a lot of things at play going on in these livestock markets, cattle markets in particular. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we have a general economy that's in shambles right now in many ways. Where we end up in terms of income numbers, jobs that we have out there, I think all that's left open to just how quickly perhaps we can see some of the pieces of the economy begin to open back up as we hit the peak of the curve related to COVID-19. We've certainly seen a huge shift away from food service towards grocery store expansion that has driven us at times to different components of boxed beef moving higher and other components moving lower. I will say just the plant closures that we have going on today and where those continue to unfold over the next couple of weeks has a lot to do with how difficult prices may be for producers and consumers related to cattle and beef. I don't want us to forget, so sometimes I try to find the silver lining in all of this. When you think about what's happening in China with African swine fever, we have global meat consumption down substantially over the past few years. I wonder if that won't give us some stronger demand later in 2020. And perhaps the real answer to the question about how long do I hold calves, I think holding those calves for a longer period of time to get over the worst of what we're seeing happen in terms of plant shutdowns could prove beneficial to those cattle producers that have enough grass, enough forage to hold on to those. Although no slides for today, don't forget Cattle on Feed comes out tomorrow afternoon. Pre-report estimates suggest placements down anywhere from, so the range was incredibly wide, down from 15% to 50% in terms of those range of placements. So we'll see what we get in terms of how many calves are actually being held right now out there on farms. I don't want us to forget that we went into this year with overall meat production expanding. I think that only exacerbates some of the problems that we see today. I wanted for a minute to talk about the USDA program. So there's $5.1 billion for cattle producers in that. For those of you that have seen estimates of what this really means, I just remind you that USDA has not given us final details on that. And so those that are out there talking about exactly how this will be implemented are a little bit speculating at this point. I will be curious to see the final information from USDA. I think this is a telling slide, and I hope everyone will look here for a minute. So the black line, all right, so it's average daily cattle slaughter in the U.S., black line being 2020. Before you focus on the very abrupt downturn that we see, I back you up to where we almost hit 115,000 on an average daily basis. I think packers did understand what might have been coming in terms of plant shutdowns, and I think we actually pushed pretty hard in terms of slaughter runs there before we fell off the cliff, if you will. Down 20–25%. Where we go from this point forward is certainly critical to the producer versus consumer. So I go, this slide for sure tells us just how tough it is for producers when you have slaughter, average daily slaughter down that 20–25%. Yet, to put a little context here for consumers, we're really talking about slaughter levels that we would have seen back in 2015. So I think there's less concern about what's happening on the consumer side of the equation than producer side of the equation. So I'm going to be paying attention. This is my slide I will be paying attention to for the next several days in terms of what happens to markets. All right, so we certainly have seen now box beef prices that have been on a skyrocket this morning. We saw choice box beef prices hit $283, so record level of box beef prices. again, I think related to just what we're seeing happening with reduced slaughter numbers, we're picking up on all of the different components. But you might notice some of those are certainly moving up more. Again, I think grocery store demand is pulling on that. I know producers are less than happy when they see lower cattle prices right now, yet we're pushing these box beef prices higher. I might suggest we're not done with that scenario. So until we can return slaughter to more normal levels, we're likely going to see packer margins reasonably wide. I can still be more optimistic about where we sit longer term. So the gold line is the June live cattle futures contract. The black line is the December CME live cattle futures contract. To me, this just highlights how negative we are here in the very short run. Once we've kind of gotten around that $85 level, we've been plus or minus for several days running. Yet when you look at the December futures contract sitting more in that 95 to $1 range, I think people have decided that we get out of the worst of this COVID-19, we start to open up the economy here in the United States. I always say, number one, I think a lot of consumers are going to want to go out and eat out for a change. And we could see some real pull from that. I think exports are going to be strong. In cattle in particular, I talk about Japan and Korea as being a couple of markets that I think are going to continue to be strong for us. And so I do think as we get later in 2020, things will look much better for cattle markets than where we sit today. So we'll see how that all plays out. I keep saying, the short term's tough, 2 to 4 weeks. Tell me what processing capacity really does. The more we curtail and shut down plants, which I will say some of the most recent data, we're finally starting to see some plants open back up. I'm hearing rumors that the JBS Greeley plant will be opening here in the next few days. So we are seeing maybe some more positive signs coming as we look forward. I kind of look out 6 to 12 and say I think prices could get better for cattle producers. It may be a slow demand recovery, but I do see a little bit of slug happen once we try to fill that food service pipeline. It may not last very long, but by late 2020, things hopefully get better. And I close by just reminding us that I'm no COVID-19 expert, and exactly how this all plays out is important. If we were to have a second wave, or it was to rebound in terms of cases as we get into the fall and winter of this year, all bets are off about my little more positive outlook as we get later in the year.